Today I'm going to talk about, hold on, I gotta move this around. This guy, it's the Ricoh 500. It's a fun story about this. So I lived in Arizona for about a year, and this was given to me a long time ago, and I completely forgot about it. And I found it covered in candle wax in the closet of my house in Arizona because it gets really hot there. The candle just melted. So it has it smells really good too, which is funny because the candle was scented. So when I hold it up to my face, I get a nice like pine smell. And I was really, I took it out. It's a rangefinder camera, 35mm camera. And if you want to bring up those photos on your screen, I can talk.
Sure. Yeah.
Sure.
I'm realizing that 3 minutes might not be enough. So take your time. It's
okay. I will.
Let's see. Screen share. Okay, here we are. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
So I took these photos, and when I was taking the photos, I was like, nothing's going to happen. They're all going to come out probably horrible, gross, messed up and not sharp. And then I took them to, I forget, I'm unsure what kind of roll of film I was using. I want to say it was Fuji or Kodak. I'm not sure. I'm really bad at remembering which ones I use. I really have to learn that. But if we open up the first image, at the top.
This one?
Yeah. Any of them is fine. You can start with any of them.
It's flipping through the images, right?
No, it's showing like your folder.
Oh.
I think preview might work best.
Okay. Yeah, I'm opening in preview, and it's not showing.
No.
Okay. Let me stop the share, and
I think you have to select which screen you want to be sharing from your share screen option. Like there should be multiple tabs you have the ability to share with.
Okay. Oh, maybe it's desktop. How about now?
There we go.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, we can go back to that first image.
Okay.
So I took it down to Dumbo, and I just started taking photos, and then I got the photos back, and I was literally blown away. I didn't think I was going to get anything out of it. I thought, like I said, I thought it was just going to come out muddy and unsharp, and it blew me away. And like the next photo with the tree, like you can just see like the really good detail and color representation in it. And everything is super sharp. I did it mostly at like F11 at like 2/50th of a second because it was a nice sunny day out. But yeah, cool. They came out really, really good.
It's a cheaper camera, right? You can get it like in the $30 range.
Yeah. Which I looked it up, and it's like a 1950s camera. And it's like $50, and it's a killer camera.
You want to remind us the name of it again? I'm looking for a cheap 35 rangefinder.
Yeah, it's a Ricoh, so it's hopefully I'm saying it right. Ricoh 500.
And that's a fixed lens on it, or?
Yes, it's a fixed lens. It is a. Let's see, it's a 2.8. It doesn't say, it just says 4.5 centimeter.
Okay.
On the lens. Yeah. First rangefinder I've ever had and ever used. And it's, like I said, it did a really, really killer job. And the way you actually advance is there's a little lever at the bottom, and you just kind of like that, and then
wow.
Yeah. And it comes with this thing on the front. It's like you screw it on. I think it's supposed to be like a telephoto part, but I never used it. I might use it, but I'm still learning how to use rangefinders the best because I know that when you're looking through it, it's not really looking through the lens, you're looking through the mirrors and stuff like that. And the bottom is actually, it's kind of like I've seen Leicas do this where the bottom actually comes down and then you thread it through there and then slide it back up and then screw it on and stuff. But yeah, like I said,
I think Ricoh later made like point and shoots that were like on the expensive side. Like I don't know which one it is, but there's like a $500 Ricoh, right?
oh.
Right. Yeah, they have a digital point and shoot as well.
Is Ricoh and Rolleiflex is sort of somewhat of a family?
Oh, okay. So it looks like Emily's
Rolly, Ricoh. I don't know. Does yours,
This isn't
Ryan?
mine,
Do you have any
but I have
markings that say? Does it say any markings that say like made in Germany or something like that?
I could definitely look. Made in Japan.
Okay, cool. Well, that was great. Emily, would you like to take the torch and talk about your Ricoh?
Oh, that wasn't mine. That's my fiance's. It just happens to be right here.
Okay, okay, cool.
But I can talk about my camera.
Yeah, sure. If you want to go, that's great.
Yeah. So I have a Fujifilm GF670. It's a medium format folding camera. And
that is so fucking cool.
I
so fucking
love
cool.
it.
Yes.
So
beautiful.
It's fairly new for medium format cameras. I think it was made in the 2000s. And maybe in like 2014 or 15, B&H was like, oh, we found like a whole box of like stock of new, never opened cameras in our factory or our warehouse. And so they sold them after they had already been sold out in this big frenzy. But I got this one for a pretty good deal. They're still very expensive. So it's like my baby, but it's an amazing camera. It shoots 6x6 or 6x7.
Whoa.
Awesome.
It has aperture priority. It only goes up to 1/500th of a second, but that's fine. And
Medium format. You don't want
to. And it's super sharp lens. It's a 3.5 80 millimeter. It's fixed, obviously, which that's the only thing that would make this camera perfect is if you could somehow change lenses. But it's a rangefinder. It has parallax control, so what you see through it is like very accurate.
Wow.
The color or the
multi-coding
aperture priority, it's super accurate. I carry it around all the time, and since it folds up, like
so awesome.
It fits in my bags. It's like I use it for everything. I sent you some photos.
Yeah, let me screen share.
Yeah.
What's the
it's under Baron, my last name.
What's the price range again for this
Oh,
camera?
I think they're selling for like $2,000 now.
Okay. Can everyone see this?
Yeah. So
okay, cool.
Yeah,
excellent
just
shot.
Super sharp lens. It's just like traveling snapshots, like very low aperture, high aperture, like f/18 or something.
Oh, wow. That's gorgeous. Look at that.
Yeah.
What film stock is this?
This dog, I want to say it was slide film. I could go back and look. But yeah, the other ones I think are Portra.
Oh, wow. That's gorgeous. So you like kind of shooting wide open?
Sometimes. Obviously, it's a lot of fun. It looks gorgeous. I shoot a lot of dogs on the street. I work in Manhattan, so like I always have a camera with me, and I've been shooting just like a lot of dogs and sometimes people as I meet them. And yeah, to get them moving fast, I have to shoot wide open a lot.
The cat is like, silhouette of that cat is pretty iconic. I love that.
Yeah.
Especially with film, and like you don't have the option to shoot a bunch of digital photos, and you end up getting that really pinnacle moment on like the tail curls and everything.
Yeah, and that's why I love this camera, is because, I mean, for a medium format, it's fairly compact. So I have it with me most of the time, and it's just an awesome opportunity. And I feel like I don't ever want to sell it, but if I do, they hold their value really well, so that's good. They also made a wide version that wasn't folding. I want to say it was like a 40 millimeter lens. And those are pretty cool. I had a buddy who had one, and they're cool.
How do you feel about the 80? Does it feel too tight? Is it just right?
I mean, I kind of wish I had the wider one just because I like wide shot. I don't know. It's hard because if you're gonna choose one lens, I guess it's okay in between. You can kind of do everything with it. You're not going to be shooting like covert street photography with this, really, because it's pretty obvious. But
does it have an integrated light meter?
Yeah. Yes. Oh, and when we were talking about film advances, it just has like a wheel like that, so you just have to turn it with your thumb. It's not the fastest, but.
Can you repeat the name of it?
It's a Fujifilm GF. Oh, you probably can't see that. GF670. I'll put it in the comments.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks. And the bellows, does it seem really sturdy, or does it seem like it can kind of wear out after?
Yeah, no, it seems really sturdy. And that's one of the things that I like that's newer is if anything ever, I don't think anything's gonna wear out in my lifetime. So
Fuji's not going
I
anywhere.
got it new from B&H from this preserve stock they had.
this one isn't. I got this one used because I'm not
Okay.
a bajillionaire.
Right.
But
I've heard people talk about issues with the bellows with that, like that and the Makina, but
oh no.
so yeah, that's good. No.
Yeah.
And that with the part that folds out never gets in the way. I always look at it and I think like, oh my gosh, is that?
No, so
And
people.
I realized they wouldn't design it.
The only thing you have to do is set it to infinity before you close it, or else it would hit the lens, and everyone freaks out. They say, do you put it to infinity? And you get used to it before you close it. So
You mentioned the parallax with the viewfinder, and I'm actually confused, or if you have a better, a good explanation for like parallax of the rangefinder, how's that?
yeah, so
Because it's something I've heard come up, but I haven't really wrapped my head around it.
yeah, so I think Ryan, you were talking about how when you look through the rangefinder, it's not exactly what you're seeing through the lens.
Right.
Somehow, I don't know how it works, but it's
magic.
Yeah, it magically makes it, I guess it adjusts it, when you're looking through a viewfinder. So it is what you're looking, at least that's how I understand
Is it something where depending on what you focus on, do the frames adjust too? Like the frames that you see? I was reading something really complicated once about how
it's kind of complicated, but basically a parallax view is instead of when you look through the viewfinder having mirrors that allow you to look straight through the lens, so what you see is what you get. The parallax view is you are looking a little to one side of where the lens is.
Right.
And some cameras, both still and movie, would compensate by having kind of like a secondary lens over the parallax that was kind of crude, or a distance guide. Bolex film cameras are kind of like the best example of a parallax type camera setup. But it was a lot more common, I'd say, before the 1960s.
Okay.
Isn't kind of a rule of thumb that like there are cameras where the viewfinder is directly above the lens, and those are supposed to be the best for avoiding the parallax issue.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of one. Like, for example, the Voigtlander Bessa is supposed to be so great because like you're looking exactly like just above the lens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that has to do with where so there's the window that you look through, and then there's like a second window where the focus converges.
Yeah, like have you ever seen one of these like Fuji Instax cameras?
Can't think of it off the top of my head, but
okay, this actually is a good illustration. So here, This is a parallax camera. I'm not looking, my eyepiece is not looking, giving me this view.
Right.
It's giving me this view. So like, especially with cheaper cameras, it drives me bonkers because it's like, oh, perfect. I've got this shot. And then I end up with this shot.
Okay.
Yeah. So there.
It's kind of just a problem if you're close up to the subject, I think. You know, if you're far away, it's
more
okay.
of a close-up image.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, if anyone has it, can point to any good text about that. I'm just curious because I was looking at some Voigtlanders recently and saw some things that came across that, but I don't want to derail the whole conversation about that.
So my understanding is that most of these cameras, they'll have a fixed lens. And so there's a recommended distance that you're going to use it because they're basically like making the field of view for the viewfinder match up at that distance.
Got it.
The better quality of that work that they did is going to be apparent. If you're looking at like a Voigtlander that has, let's say, interchangeable lenses, you're going to run into more problems because they probably made the parallax of whatever the normal lens is, say the 50.
Right, they have the lines for 35.
And then as you're using those different, if you're using a wider lens or a narrower lens, you're going to change it. You just have to be conscious of what's going to happen there because the viewfinder is not going to change.
Okay.
And just one more thing, Kyle, you asked if when I focus it, the squares, the lines, the frame lines change. And I've never noticed this, but they do.
They do, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was reading, I read about that recently as well. So.
Cool. Well, let's move on.
Yeah.
Thank you, Emily. That was great. So is this somebody else? Would somebody else like to go or next? Should I just?
Scott's waving.
Pick me. No,
yeah, Scott, please.
Only because these last two cameras are kind of directly related to my camera. Ryan, you're going to dig this, talking about old 1950s era leaf shutter, rangefinder cameras that, you know. My favorite camera is the camera I almost never use. It is, I'd say, mid-1950s Zeiss Contaflex rangefinder leaf shutter camera. It's got a built-in light meter. But what makes this camera the most unique thing I've ever seen is the lens. Watch this. If I can, okay, give me a sec. There we go. Turn, twist. There's your lens.
Oh.
Wow.
That's your normal lens, right? So it's just this dinky little thing. It is a Carl Zeiss 50 millimeter 1:2.8 lens. But let's say you want to do telephoto or wide angle. You get your box of spare lenses.
Oh, wow.
I can never remember which is which, but that's one of them.
Damn.
That's the other. So I think the bigger is the telephoto. So when I pop this baby on here, this is where it just kind of goes all sideways because the camera gets top heavy.
I was going to say, when you put that lens down, there was a thud.
You have no idea. Okay, that's like roughly on there. So now I've got this big hunk of glass and metal that just wants to go like this. Yeah, so I think I've probably used the big lenses once or twice. They're just completely impractical for walking around. But the camera, this camera itself, when I just have the regular lens on it, is pretty, you know, like a lot of these German and Japanese knockoffs of that era, you know, it's very compact. I mean, just for comparison's sake, it's a Nikon FM2. So, you know, but it's a super soft focus lens. I mean, just really soft. So the only films that I have found that really work well with this camera are very slow German films. ADOX is one of my favorites. And it's kind of cool because, I mean, these film stocks and these cameras were all being produced at the same time. This is very old, mid-20th century film technology. And that's, I shot that picture, which you can't, I shot that with probably 50 or 100 speed ADOX with this thing. So, but
you could blow it up. It's huge. That's like a 40 by, how big is that print?
By 4 by 5, maybe, something like that. And that's a drum scan, but it's also like, you know, ASA 50.
Right.
But yeah, so that is my Zeiss Contaflex.
Awesome. And what's kind of the price range for the Contaflex?
That's a damn good question, my friend. I bought this thing on eBay several years ago. I only remember paying less than $100. There's a number of generations that Zeiss produced in the 50s. Some of them lack the internal light meter. Mine, I have one. And it accommodates, it's got a really interesting film range set. I mean, you can totally tell this was like a European thing because you can set the light meter to anything from as low as 10 ASA up to 1300, and that's it.
Oh.
Lens goes from 2A to f22, and shutter is, oh gosh, I don't know. It's kind of fast, but anyhow, yeah, that's my Zeiss.
Yeah, thanks, Scott.
Yeah.
Oscar joined us. Oscar, hey, Oscar. Oscar's an amazing large format photographer who just had a show at the Darkroom.
Oh, cool.
Everyone should check out his site, Oscar Lewin, Lewin. Oscar, do you want to show a camera, or are you just here for the ride?
Sure, I can show. I brought my 4x5. It's not really set up or anything, but this is the camera. It's a Toyo Field. So it's a Field 4x5 camera, and it opens up like this. Yeah. The nice thing about 4x5 field cameras is that they're relatively easy to compare to some other large format and 4x5 cameras or other large format cameras in general. They just sort of fold up, whereas like you could get a rail camera that you have to really set up. I've actually never used one before, so don't know that much about it. But yeah, the great thing about 4x5 cameras is that they're very, I mean, the like image size is like twice the size of 120 and like 8 times the size of 35mm. So you just get a way better image in general, and that image quality is really great. You can scan and print a lot larger. The drawback is that it is expensive to shoot 4x5 film, and it's a timely process because you have to like set everything up, and you know, because it's so expensive, you kind of have to make sure that everything's right, and which can make it like difficult to shoot certain topics a lot of the times, like because you have to make sure it's like perfect in a lot of ways.
Are you a solely a 4x5 photographer, or do you use other cameras?
I started shooting on 35mm for the most part, like all when I was in school, and yeah, I didn't really know that much about 4x5 until like I was a senior in school, and I started shooting 4x5, and I just instantly fell in love with it, and I just like the difference between shooting 35 and 4x5 is so different because like I would just kind of fire away before I got a 4x5, and I think that like getting 4x5 really forces you to slow down and think about your images a little bit more, and like forces you to make sure everything's right. Whereas you know, shooting 35, like you can kind of just run and gun, so to speak.
Hit a wall.
I just really liked, and one thing that I really like about 4x5 is like the interaction that you get with like subjects or anyone that you're taking a photo of, or anything in general. Like it's definitely more of a performance versus 35, and you really have to engage subject, or just it's a lot more involved. And yeah, I think it's just more gratifying. You get a really good 4x5 image or something like that.
I have a technical question. I was in the darkroom yesterday processing my black and white 4x5, and this happens all the time where like kind of a big chunk of the film got like nicked in the process. And like in the middle of the negative, it will be like
a piece of emulsion itself fell off.
Piece of the emulsion fell off. Yeah, I wonder if it's like through agitating too roughly, or I'm using that like red. What's that?
How are you developing it?
So
like, were you tray developing?
No, I put it on the red thing that goes into the Patterson plastic tank, and that takes six images at a time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I've never used that tank before, but I have seen a lot of people use that tank, and I've seen that tank fuck up a lot of people's film. So I won't ever use that tank in particular, because I've seen it fuck up so many pieces of film. And a lot of times it's not like the emulsion's coming off. It's more of like it just leaves development streaks, or it sort of encourages like some sheets to touch other sheets when it's developing. So you get like big blotchy spots that weren't developed. Yeah, so I got a development tank that only holds 4 sheets, but like it seems like it's the best tank that you can get.
And what's the name of
for
it?
development? It's called, let me look it up really quick. I think it's called SP45 developing tank.
Cameron, I use that same Patterson. I have one personally that I use at home. I put a single sheet on each side. I never go to capacity, because I found tons of issues because they just barely, like, so gingerly hold on to the films that the films, they fall onto each other and it messes the whole thing up. So I always do too. In your instance, I wonder if the actual film you were working with was old. I wonder if there was a fault with that, if it was dated.
Yeah.
If like a whole dime's worth of emulsion came off or whatever,
Another thing that could have happened is that like there could have been like a piece of dust or sand or something in your holder, and that could have like scraped off some emulsion when you put the film inside.
Yeah, I mean, I shoot 4x5 on occasion, and I really love the quality of the negatives, but when I go to print them in the darkroom, like I often find like really big problems with the negatives. I know, there's a photographer who shoots 4x5 and he just scans it, and he basically uses the negative and then creates a digital image. But I'm interested in like making an analog photo with a 4x5, and just the chances of messing up the film are like too high for me I'm still figuring it out. I'm trying to figure out how to get it so I'm not messing up any film.
So the tank that I have is called SP445 compact, or Stearman Press SP445, and it's a really good tank, and I've never seen or heard of anybody having any issues with it as far as developing goes.
Cameron,
it's really sweet.
Are you having that issue? Are you developing all your film, or is it Just out of curiosity, or have you taken it to a lab also to get processed?
If I have something really important, I'll take it to a lab.
Okay. But then do you find issues when you print even a negative that was processed at a lab, or?
I don't really shoot 4x5 enough to like, I've only shot probably, I don't know, 6 or 7 times, like bigger shoots. So, yeah. There's also kind of this like weird thing that I've noticed. It's like when I shoot film, like it's kind of like how Germany, like Cologne was bombed in 45, but like somehow that church remained like didn't get hit. I feel like that's how film is. Like you fuck up all these images and then like the one really good one somehow didn't get messed up.
Yeah.
That's like part of the magic, isn't it? I mean, even when you fuck up a roll, I mean, those kind of weird, happy chemical accidents.
Yeah. Oscar, can you write in the chat the name of that tank?
Sure. This is actually the first time I've ever used Zoom, so pardon my lack of.
Well, you did beautifully. Thanks for joining. Should we move on to Gregory?
Cameron.
Do you want to compare and contrast your 4x5? Okay.
Well, I figured, yeah. Let me pull it off here. Unlike Oscar's, I have a monorail 4x5 camera. It sits on a single rail. It's a Sinar F1. It's Swiss made. I started my photographic pursuit with a 5x7 camera. I had never seen cameras before. A friend of mine invited me over, and he had this crazy thing in his driveway. I had never seen anything like it. And he goes, "Put the sheet over your head," and I was hooked ever since. I find large format cameras, specifically large format on a dedicated rail, to be effectively the artist equivalent of a painter and a canvas with brushes. It's pure. I find it to be a very pure pursuit, and I find this mechanical device to although be cumbersome at times, lacks nothing in the way of. There's no compromise. There is no keystoning. There is every roll of film. You have to develop it for a single roll film. You have to develop it one time. These are individual sheets. Every shot is bespoke. Every development process is tailored to the specific image. Here I have a Schneider 90 millimeter, which is classified as somewhat of a wide lens for these. It's it's a 5.6 aperture, and it goes all the way to 45. The shutter is entirely, let me see if I can do this here. The shutter is entirely integrated into the lens system. You just simply close it, prime it, and then you fire it, and that's how it works. And then the whole thing is, and then that's just that, and it's wonderful. So I have this, like I said, it's classified here, this 90 millimeter as a wide lens. So this is why I have this bag bellow system. So there's not a lot of movement on the rail itself, but I still have full control over the individual standards, and I can make all kinds of crazy shapes. I'm actually presently fleeing New York. I'm in Charleston, South Carolina right now, and I've been doing this whole pursuit of the southern states in like various abandoned places. And I'm using this, the whole way around.
Cool.
I could put a 120 back onto it, which is really good. Again, in the events that I want to have, a little bit more flexibility, I got the 120 back. That's pretty wonderful. It functions the same way. It's a Graflex machine, and it functions the same way as Emily's, just rolling. That's all it is.
Where do you get your film processed in the South?
Actually, at this moment, I'm just going to photograph until I've got no more, until I've reached capacity, and then I'll just mosey back towards New York and then develop it all.
Cool.
In Bed-Stuy,
So I have an
live.
image
Yeah.
from you. Let's see.
Yeah, it's just one. It's the only thing that's been scanned. That's the Myrtle Broadway station. I sent it via email. There's probably a lot of compression, but what that represents, that is a FP, no, actually, I think that's HP5 film. What is it here? Yeah, I took it at my diary. It was HP5 400. I shot it at 10 minutes, and then I reduced the development by 26%. So again, that ties into the whole ability that you could have like completely bespoke images. So you massively overexpose in order to pull information out of the low light situation, and then underdevelop to keep the highlights at bay. Again, this is just a scan. I think it's pretty good. Burrow Photo does a great job. I think a print could do just as well.
Cool. Thanks.
That's something I like.
Yeah. I love 4x5 because it like kind of brings you back to the origin, or just the idea of photography, like a little box and a hole.
Yeah.
In a surface, and then light, the way light travels, like, and kind of inverts. It's just so simple and beautiful, the whole process.
Yeah, and I got in the whole kit. It's just a lot of fun. It's like I've got levels. I don't know. There's something like really mathematical and kind of nerdy and technical about it. There's something just there's this Oscar. Like, to your point, there's such a sense of pantomime. There's a real like occasion. It's like, it's not just a bring out this camera, take a picture. This is an event. It's really a lot of fun.
Cool. Awesome.
How do you feel like taking that camera out and like the portability of it in general?
It's like, it's a little on the cumbersome side. It certainly is. I've tried to, over the years, to make things lightweight. I got a Gitzo tripod that I found at Cooper Union. That's reduced. I mean, it's really heavy duty, but it weighs nothing, so that's really nice. And then this camera itself was in itself an upgrade from an earlier Cambo machine that I had. Same sort of deal. It's just, it becomes a little lighter. What I've done that has helped me is just kind of have it all here and put it into a backpack. Like a certain type of backpack that I have, I'm able to protect it, and then I can just have it on my back and carry the tripod out. And that's been the best sort of compromise, so to speak. But it's kind of a bitch. I mean, there's no lie. It's no 35 millimeter, and it's definitely not like a field camera like yours, designed to be in a field. Like, this is truly designed to be in a studio, and I'm not doing that. I'm going outside. So, but I like it. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know Judith Black's work?
No.
I just saw her give a talk on Zoom a couple of days ago, and she photographed mainly her family in like the Boston area, like in the 80s and 90s, but she took a lot of Polaroid 4x5 Polaroids, and it made me really wish that we still had that technology, because one, it's great because you can see immediately like if you got the shot or what it looks like, but also they just have a really different and unique look to them than like a 4x5 negative. Her website's great. She just came out with a book.
What was her last name?
Yeah, what is her last name?
Black.
Oh.
Judith is her first name. I think she was working with a 4x5 field camera.
Oh, sure.
So.
Oh, yeah. Oh, these are cool.
Cool.
Oh, yeah.
Cool. So Brittany is going to show a camera, and I have a couple of Brittany's images. So just let me know when you want me to put them on the screen.
Okay. Okay, so this is my Nikon F Photomic. It, I believe, was made in '67 because you can see, I don't know if you can see actually, but there are serial numbers, and so like the first two serial numbers are the year it was made, which is pretty cool. And it has this feature that I actually didn't know about until maybe a few weeks after this was gifted to me, because this was my first SLR Like I've always shot digital, and I'm a film major, so getting this was like a huge deal for me because digital has always been really daunting for me, and with this it felt so natural. But anyway, this feature is like there's this button at the back and you press it and then gotta wiggle it a bit, but it's a little old, but it pops off.
Yeah.
So then there is a viewfinder where you can like just, have it on your hip. And I don't really use it because I think this might be in line with the whole parallax issue. I'm still kind of trying to understand that, but it doesn't actually show you like exactly, I don't know how to explain it. It kind of reverses the image basically. So it's a bit
Flips
confusing
it.
for me.
Yeah, reverses it, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And so I currently have on my 28mm lens, but it came with a 50mm, and I also have a 35. But I would say my 50mm is my favorite in terms of versatility, because if it's getting dark, then I know I can go up to 1.4, whereas the other ones, this one goes up to 2.8, and this one goes up to 3.5. So yeah, I would have to get an external flash and then like attach it to this little hot shoe. But yeah, I usually use Kodak Ultramax 400 or Kodak Gold 200 because I know a lot of people are like obsessed with Portra 400, but for some reason, whenever I use it with this camera, the images kind of just look muddy, if that makes sense. Like the colors are not bright or anything. It's very like watered down. So I need to figure that out. But yeah.
I was working at the darkroom a couple days ago and scanning somebody's Kodak Gold 35mm, and it looked so good. And it's so much cheaper than Portra.
Exactly. It's like astounding to me because I feel like people don't really talk about Kodak Gold in the same manner.
Yeah. Cool. You want me to show you some of your images?
Yes, I would love that. I'm
Okay.
pretty sure all of these were shot with my 50mm lens.
Brittany, how old is that camera? How old did you say it was?
This is from 67.
Cool.
Yeah. So yeah, this is one of the first ones. This, oh my God, this was from the first shoot that I did where everything actually came out. I was so surprised, like, because I forgot to mention this has a built-in light meter, but mine doesn't work. So I have to use a Minolta light meter. And yeah, I was just really excited that all of these came out. These were shot on Kodak Ultramax 400, I believe. And the quality might not be the best because I did send these from my phone, but when I did get them back, they were like way sharper than I thought they would be.
Yeah, they look great.
Thank you.
And yeah.
Yeah, so it's a little blurry, but I personally like the quality for
wow.
If you're going for a softer aesthetic, it's perfect, I think.
Does anybody know like a good like shutter speed chart? I've been like interested in like just learning it and not relying on the in-camera shutter meter. Just being like 400 in the shade, f8, 1/60th of a second. Is there one out there that somebody knows of?
There's if you look for Sunny 16 rule, you'll find some that will do that. A lot of older cameras will have that printed on the side of them.
Okay.
Especially movie cameras usually. So it'll have like the recommended ASA f16, and then in the sun, in the shade, what your aperture would be, and then you're supposed to be able to calculate from that to make an educated guess.
Okay, so you can like if you go to f8, then you can think like reasonably that the shutter speed's also going to be half. That's the idea.
Yeah, and so like I can, I'll look through. I have all my stuff from college, and at my school is a technical-based school, and we had to spend like an entire course doing shutter calculations where they are like, hey, you're at f4, you're at ASA 400 outside, and you're shooting f8, and you want to change to this. What do you do? So I'll look and see if I have one of those charts. They call that, I think they just call it shutter calculation chart.
Yeah, that would be awesome if you
Basically, you like drill yourself on it, and then eventually you just know it.
I feel like it's one of those things that you just have to force yourself to do.
Yeah.
Like get a camera that doesn't have a light meter and shoot like a couple rolls through it, and then you'll be good. Like it'll just be, you can estimate it. Go for it.
Yeah, I've been eyeing the Yashica. It's the Yashica something 2000, and it doesn't have a light meter and it doesn't take a battery.
Yeah.
And it's like a $20 body. And I love the idea of like this really light SLR where you're just doing everything manually.
That's a 35?
Yeah. I think it's maybe FX 2000.
Oh.
And they're awesome because they take the FY lenses. No, the YC Yashica contacts. So you can buy like a contacts lens and put it on a super cheap body.
I have like a app on my phone called Light Meter too, which I find to be pretty good. If you, does anyone else use like a phone light meter app at all?
I do.
I do.
I have a handheld one, but I use my phone one more.
Yeah, I always find if it's a sunnier thing, like a little brighter situation, overexposed by like a stop or a half stop, and it's more shadow, you just underexpose, and it's good.
It's also dependent on the film. So if you use slide film, I think the rule of thumb is that you overexpose, and if you are using print film, you underexpose.
Okay.
So because what happens in the slide film is if you go too dark, you can't get any detail back.
Right.
And in print film, if you go too light, you can't get any detail back.
Yeah.
So you're kind of like walking a dance there.
Yeah.
Cool. Bryce, that looks like a pretty awesome camera behind you. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. So I was going to show this is the camera I use the most. I use this camera in studio mostly, but I do take it out in the field. It's the Mamiya RZ67. I'm sure you've all seen it on YouTube. A lot of YouTube guys are really into this camera right now for fashion and like stuff like that. I bought this camera in 2011, I want to say. It was not popular. Nobody wanted medium format cameras. Film was almost dead was the conversation at that time, and I paid $600 for it. Now they're about $8,000 or $800 to $1,200 for just the body. I wanted to get into a medium format system because I shot a lot of 35, and I knew that medium format, you're getting bigger negatives, so you can do more with it. I went with this because like I walked into the camera shop and wanted a medium format camera, and they had this or a Hasselblad. The Hasselblad was still very expensive, so I went with this, and I'm glad I did. In the 90s, these are like the fucking workhorses in the industry. Anyone who shot a magazine cover did portrait photography with this or a 4x5. The optics and the lenses are superb. It's modular, so everything comes off of it, and it just becomes a square. It has interchangeable everything. If you want a different view screen, you can put that in. This is the prism. It has the meter in it. I actually use the pop-up like without the meter a lot in studio, because a lot of times I'm putting the camera straight down or at a weird angle where getting behind it to look through is not very good. So I'll just put the pop-up on it and be able to face from a different direction. It's got the auto winder on it right now. And when I use it in studio, I use my digital back. I bought an old digital back. It's only twice as big as a 35 millimeter frame. It's only 17 megapixels. It competes with the D800 though in quality of resolution. And so I'm still getting a lot of life out of it, which has left me in a really bad position where like probably within the next update of Mac OS, I'm gonna lose all of my ability to use it. So I have like 2 or 3 vintage computers and I'm like cobbling together to make sure I can still use it. The other thing I love about it, like I said, it's modular. So I have a 120 back and I have a 220 back. And I usually shoot black and white Ilford HP5, or I shoot for color. I like Kodak EPP, which is a discontinued film, which sucks for me. They stopped making it. There's talks that they were going to remake it, but it's different than Portra. It's more contrasty and has better color, in my opinion. Like someone else was saying, Portra just seems really washed out to me, and I don't love it like everybody else, which makes me feel weird, but whatever. The cool thing, when I take it out, I take it off the winder usually and use the hand thing, and then I just crank it. It's got like a side crank to load it. Probably the other most important feature to me about it is that it has a mirror lockup mode where if you attach your shutter plunger to the lens, you can press the camera to lift the mirror and then fire the photo from the lens so that you don't have any shake. So that's kind of like
that after years of using one of those last summer. I had no idea.
Yeah.
What's the digital back you have?
Yeah.
What's the digital back you have on it?
It's a Leaf back. It's pretty old. It came out in 2006, I think. Okay. It's a Velia 17WI. They're really affordable. I actually saw one for about $400 on eBay. Oh, wow. I paid $4 for mine, I think. And it came, the most important thing is it came with this adapter plate.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you needed an adapter.
Yeah, you need an adapter plate, and I have it looking really clean right now. When you shoot with this arrangement, you have to have a cable that runs to the shutter. Okay. So when the shutter fires, it tells the digital back like, hey, it's time to take the picture. And then the digital back fires the flash. I use a lot of flash in studio. Another cool thing about this camera that I love is that it has a bellows on it on a rail. And so you can get like really close to stuff like a macro. Mm-hmm. So almost every lens has very close focusing, like within 5 inches.
I got a question for you, Bryce, because I have the same camera as that. I said I have the same camera. I was just curious, have you ever run into a problem where the battery for the electronics, just like if you leave it in, dies?
Yes.
Yeah?
Okay, so these cameras are known for being very pain in the assy about the battery.
Okay.
Which is why there's a little slider switch by the trigger down here on the front. Mm-hmm. And if you put it into red mode, I think it is, it's mechanical, and it'll fire at 400. So it'll fire the lens and everything at 400 always, no matter if you have a battery or not. But you won't be able to use your finder. You won't be able to use the light meter, but it'll still fire. I shoot a lot of stuff at 400, honestly, because I'm shooting to flash, and since it's a leaf shutter, the flash will sync at 400. And so even when I'm outside, I'm usually shooting around 4. I think sometimes I go down to 60. I also keep like a pack of those batteries with me always, because it's like, you know, if you need to change, you're going to be screwed.
Yeah, I just, when I'm not using it, I just take the battery out and put it next to it. I just was curious if other people have run into that, so it's good to hear that that's a thing. That's not just my camera.
Do you have the prism finder?
I have that, but I don't have the one that has the light meter in it.
Okay, so does the one without the light meter it has a little switch up here that closes the eye?
I've never looked, but it might.
So when I store mine and I'm not using it, I close that always, and I put a lens cap on or cover the camera. I think the battery, like the light meter, detects light, and then it turns the camera on, but if you shut those, it turns them off.
Interesting. I'll check it out.
That might be something to look into. I'm not like an expert on the technical part of it.
Cool. So I'll show the images that you sent.
Hey, Bryce, serious question. 120 versus 220 films.
Length.
What is it? Length, okay.
And they don't make 220 anymore. the other thing that I asked a photographer that I know in the ASMP that used to shoot film at a meeting once, why they had 220 and 120, because he was saying you used to be able to buy match stock. So you would buy whatever film you wanted, HP5, let's say, and you would buy 120 and 220 that was cut out of the exact same strip of film. And then what you would do is you would shoot your test images on the 120 back and make notes. And then once you got what you thought you needed, you would put the 220 back on and shoot that whole roll for one series of pictures. And so then maybe all day you would shoot 3 or 4 different key images, right? And so then you would go in the darkroom and take your 120 film and cut test strips out of it so that you knew how to process the 220 to get exactly what you wanted. And I think that's why it was popular, and that's why they discontinued it, because nobody's doing that anymore. So there's no need to buy.
Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to flip to these images.
So, and I included some of the farther shots for scale. Like this is an example of how close you can get with this.
Is this that just cropped closer?
Same thing. Same
Okay.
lens, 90 millimeter.
Wow.
220 film is like twice this length of 120, so you get like twice as many images out of 220.
Yes.
Cool.
So, and so this is the only film shot that I included, unfortunately. This one is shot on Polaroid. I do have a Polaroid back for this thing, and that's another feature of the camera is you can do multiple exposures really easily with it.
Yeah, it seems like an awesome system that you can do basically anything with it.
It's very versatile. I also have the tilt shift and 2 of the lenses, so I'm trying to get more into that. I worked for a guy who shot on what's called the Fuji GX670, which is like a bigger version of this. And it actually has the tilt and shift built into the camera. It's a beast. You could never take it outside. But that's kind of how I got into these medium format systems, I guess.
Awesome. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Right? How much did that tilt shift go for?
How much did I pay for it?
Yeah.
Okay, so I bought one 2 years ago for $400 without a lens, not knowing that you need special lenses for it. They're called short barrel lenses. I paid about $400 for it. Now, I wrote a grant at the beginning of this year that I got from the city to purchase lenses to go with it. And I bought 2 lenses and the tilt shift from a guy that was in New York for $1,000 on eBay recently. And that was a really good deal because these lenses are hard to get. And a lot of times you're talking about spending $400 to $800 and risking shipping them from Japan. So it's a pricier system now to get into. And honestly, if somebody was looking for a studio style camera like this, the Fuji GX670 is way affordable because nobody wants them. They are literally bottom basement prices now. And because this camera's become so popular with like influencers, and it's a little bit, it's big enough, but small enough you can take it around and shoot with it without a tripod, it has become a lot more popular and is becoming much more expensive.
What's the Fuji model?
The Fuji one is called the GX670, and I can put it in the chat. It is in the same family line as the rangefinders, but it's a studio style camera.
Cool.
Could you also put the digital back in there in the chat?
Yeah.
Cool. And how do you like that the prism finder? Is it really? I heard the image, like the magnification was really small. Or I was looking at getting one of those. They're also not. They're also pretty expensive too. But
yeah, it's not the best, man.
Yeah.
I think I got mine. I wanted it for the built-in meter, which it has a really great meter. But I would say in comparison to like the Fuji is way brighter. I don't know why this one's so much darker.
Mhm.
It just is not the best.
Right.
That's why I said I usually use it with the pop-up, just regular waist finder that comes with, usually when you buy a body, it has it on it.
Yeah. And so you said you were worried about with the next, the next Apple update that you won't be able to tether.
That just has to do with my digital back. So my digital back has not been supported by Capture One since 2008 or something like that, when Leaf was acquired.
Leaf is like a competitor
exactly, and they don't update their stuff for it. So the way that I shoot is I shoot with the original software for the digital back, and then I have Lightroom set up to watch the watched folder and move the pictures onto my hard disk.
Okay.
I'm going to be honest though, I purchased a Sony Alpha 99 to be my 35 millimeter digital body because I had a client that I needed something a little bit easier to carry around and shoot with. And the Alpha 99 tethered to Capture One is only 0.2 seconds faster than the transfer rate for this. So it's just a perceived slowness because I think honestly the way that we're socialized to expect instant gratification is really hurting a lot of these older digital backs because people are like, oh, it's not new, it's not fast.
Right.
But it's really not any slower,
Yeah, funny.
It's just perceived. And then, I'm talking to everybody here. We also shoot film, and that's a super slow process where I just develop stuff that is a year old, that I haven't had time to develop. So, and I was like, whoa, these are sweet images.
Cool. So we have 4 more people. I want to see if we can get it done in 20 minutes, just to respect everyone's time. Kyle, do you want to? Thanks, Bryce. That was great.
Thank you.
I have to run, guys. It was really incredible meeting all of you. I through my Instagram and I followed a lot of you people. Bushwick Darkroom, I love you guys. Thank you so much for this. And stay safe, everybody.
Thanks, Ryan. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So going back to the Fuji rangefinder, I got this, can you guys see it? GW690III. It's a huge plastic fixed lens thing. This was my first rangefinder camera I ever got. I got it about 5 years ago.
Sorry, is that the 3 or the?
This is the 3. Yeah,
Did you agonize over which one to get? The 1, 2, or 3?
No, I kind of I had experience with this one before. I had a friend so actually part of the reason why I got this was I had a friend in college that had one of these, and I thought it was the funniest camera. He would take it around with a flash to house parties we're at and be on the dance floor with it swinging around so carelessly and then just shooting photos. And it also only gets, it's 6x9 centimeters, only gets 8 frames per roll, per 120 roll. You get 16 by 220. I think I've found 1 roll of 220 once ever that I put through this. But anyway, I was asking about so this is my first rangefinder. I got it I was kind of primarily shooting a lot of 4x5 and then digital. And then to me, this seemed like this is going to be an easier camera to carry around and take out on the street, which it's totally doable, but it's not by any means a really small, easy camera to take around. But the images it produces are really beautiful, super sharp. It's, f3 to 3.5 to 32 lens. And during this quarantine, I got it I got it 5 years ago, and during quarantine I've started using it a lot more. And I really it's definitely growing on me. And the rangefinder thing I always had a really hard time with after being someone who used a lot of DSLR or like SLR cameras. I shoot a lot of commercial work where I'm tethered to a computer. So I'm very used to just like seeing through the lens, knowing what I'm getting. But I've kind of come to appreciate a little bit more of the surprise or the imperfection that I get with this camera. Yeah, that's
What camera were you shooting the Home Goods series with?
a lot of those were done with, that was done with like either a Nikon, like D810 or some 4x5 as well.
Okay.
And I think this was in that series too. This picture is a few years old.
Kyle's the master of the still life. I'm gonna just click through these. Ooh, nice.
That's a recent one.
It's awesome.
Started going on some long walks around Brooklyn with this camera.
The focal length, it seems kind of tight for...
It is, yeah. It's a 90 millimeter. I think it comes to like, to be about a 40 or 45 on a 35. I have to double check. I can't remember.
That's my favorite focal length. Yeah.
I found that a very hard thing because if I'm shooting a lot of interiors or portraits, a lot of that's like 35 millimeter digital is like 24, like a 24 focal length. There is the focal length on here is a little weird and hard. Like it took me a while to get used to it, but because it's sort of right in between. It's right in between like 35 and 50. So I found that kind of difficult, but I'm getting used to it more now.
Cool. Well, these are awesome.
Okay.
How's the viewfinder on that camera?
I think the viewfinder is great. Like you can't really, I mean, it's also very simple. There's no battery, no electronics, there's no meter in this camera.
Okay.
So it's really clean. The lines are clear. There's no nothing telling you what your shutter speed is. So all you're doing is looking at the image. It seems, honestly, I can't really, that's why I was asking about the parallax, because I've been looking at some other rangefinders lately, and like I haven't really, I don't really know, I can't tell you how accurate that viewfinder is, because I don't really, the way I'm shooting with it, I just kind of let myself be a little bit more loose. I'll find myself looking up, taking my eye out of the viewfinder and just putting it over the lens to kind of align and see where I am. If there's something I really want to try to get centered, but for the most part, I really just I like this camera, and I'd like to. One thing I've been really into lately is it allows me to be a lot looser and a lot more free than I normally am. Where if I'm really used to looking through the viewfinder, adjusting camera height very minutely, or if it's a 4x5, moving the lens or the film plane. So.
Awesome. Any questions for Kyle and his Fuji GW690III?
I was just gonna say, in regards to the size, I believe the nickname for that camera is the Texas Leica.
Yeah.
Because everything in Texas is bigger, baby.
That's true. Yeah, and it's a huge. I mean, it's funny. Like up to your face, it's a big camera.
Yeah, I definitely like the 6:9 ratio more than 6:7 in terms of for medium format. It seems to be a little bit more exciting. Like you can do a little bit more with it.
Right. And I had a really hard time with that at first. Even though I was shooting like a Nikon digital, I would always crop 4x5 just because I came from shooting 4x5 before I moved to digital. And so getting that, I didn't realize that there was a 6.7 and there's also a 6.8 version. And I kind of thought I always preferred the 6.7, but it's growing on me, the 6x9, which is basically roughly the same as 35 millimeter.
Well, you're inspiring me to buy one of these. I mean, they're like a third of the price of other medium format cameras.
Yeah,
like
they're
a
really
nice one for like 800. You can get the one for like 300.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would definitely recommend it. I'm kind of thinking about, it's much harder and they're more expensive, but finding the 6.7, I kind of want one of those as well.
Okay.
What's the difference between the 1, 2?
We would endorse that.
Sorry?
What's the difference between the 1, 2, and 3?
I think the construction, so this is like all plastic. It feels like very durable plastic. I've never actually touched one of the 1s or the 2s, but those I believe have some metal to them.
And like I think it's a light meter thing too.
Oh, is there a light meter in the 2?
There wasn't a light meter. Like there wasn't when they started out, and then they added one.
There's no light meter in the 3 either.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I guess
There's no electronics, so it's very simple.
Okay.
And the phone light meter comes in handy for that.
You know, it's probably, the answer is capitalism. You got to keep updating the camera to keep selling them.
Yeah. And apparently they were made for taking like group pictures, tourist pictures in Japan. I came across that. It was, so if you were like, you were at Mount Fuji or something in the spot with the, the person would like, the group would gather and somebody would be there and shoot the group photo with this. The focus, you can only focus, where is that? The closest you can focus is 1 meter, which is really pretty far from what I'm used to. And I found that very hard to kind of deal with at first. But like I said, I've had it for 5 years, kind of got it on, used it on and off, and just in the past year, really, I've been really appreciating it. So.
Awesome. That was great. Thank you. Eveline, do you want to?
Sorry.
So yeah.
I was just asking what the name of it was again. Sorry.
Oh, it's called, I'll put it in the chat. It's a Fuji GW690III. Oh, 690. Yeah.
Cool. Eveline is going to show her camera.
Yes. Okay. So my go-to camera favorite is my Leica M6. It is most likely much too good for my photographic skills since I do not have any education or formation in photography whatsoever. I'm an architectural designer. I started taking analog photographs like maybe 10 years ago. And for like 8 years, I always had the exact same camera. It's like a $35 Fuji SLR. I think it was a STX2 or something like that. Super cheap camera. It had a good lens though, so I loved it. I got used to it. I had it with me all the time. I bought it like, I think 3 times because it broke after 2-3 years. So I bought it over and over again. And then like 3 years ago, I fulfilled one of my biggest dreams I had, which was seeing a jaguar in Brazil. So the first time I saw a jaguar, I took a photo with my cheap Fuji STX2, and for the first time, well, that was like the one that didn't break down before. Anyway, it broke. It like the aperture just stayed open, and it was just such a crazy moment because I wanted to take that photo of the jaguar, and I had to put my camera away, which was beautiful too, to like just cherish that moment to see that jaguar, but it was like just so annoying to me. So that afterward I treated myself with this camera, which so far has stayed with me. Touch wood, otherwise it's gonna break down again tomorrow. But yeah, it's a very well built camera. It's all mechanic, metal. It has an interchangeable lens. I only have one lens though, a 35mm 2.8, but I usually use it on the streets. So for me, it's a very nice lens for the street, or like the only one I have. But like also I got so used to using it, to shooting with it. It's a rangefinder, which I appreciated a lot after the 35mm SLR, because you can look beyond the actual frame. And yeah, ever since I bought it, I have it with me pretty much every day.
And the rangefinder is cool because you can shoot a lot slower and get away with it. Like
yeah.
20th of a second, 30th. I have a SLR that I really like, but like the slowest I can shoot is at 60th of a second, and that's pretty annoying.
Do you actually, I mean, the Leica, does it really hold up to the hype of it just being this ultra camera? I've never honestly handled one, used one. It's too small of a format for my liking. But is it really like this legend, this mythical beast of a thing?
Well, for me, it's quite a, like, I sometimes more feel like my camera's companion than to see the camera as my companion. But like, just because I think I probably don't have like all these skills that I could use the camera. Actually, like I probably cannot use it all the way you could use it for, I guess, but yeah.
And what lens do you have on it?
It's a Zeiss Biogon 2.8, 35mm.
Yeah, I would love to have one of those. What does it feel very heavy?
It's very heavy, but it's I think it's a very nice. It's a nice feeling to have. Like, I usually only have the camera like strapped around me, but it's heavy, but it's like a nice weight.
And you don't miss any Jaguar photos with it, right?
Well, I haven't been back to the jungle ever since.
Bummer.
But only concrete
You have
jungle.
to now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now that you have that, you need to go back with something more reliable.
Sorry?
I said you need to go back with something more reliable like you have now.
I probably should, yeah.
I heard, oh, sorry, there's an ambulance. Was Leica the company that started the 35mm film canisters?
What do you mean?
So I read that, before 35, everyone was shooting sheet film.
Yeah. You mean like the camera where the film is rolled in, like...
Yeah, so 35 used to actually only be for motion picture.
Mm-hmm.
And then somebody had the idea to put them in film canisters and create a camera that could shoot at that format. And so whenever we're shooting 35, we're actually like using a piece of technology that was meant for motion picture. So, but I think that Leica was the camera that was made for that first canister.
Oh, I wouldn't know that. That's something only you know, Cameron.
I think that's why people love them, because it's kind of like, it's like the UR 35mm camera. It goes back to like the whole idea of like the quick, complete photography idea.
Oh, that's wonderful. I don't know.
Yeah. Awesome. So thank you, Eveline. Thomas, you want to talk about your camera?
Yes. I chose to talk about the Nikon F100. I have that here. I got it in February. Just a little background as to like why I ended up on this camera, I guess. Starts with back in design school, I did, it was like a succession of my drawing classes. They had us buy a camera for like a viz class. And it was mainly to talk about like composition, and we watched a lot of films and learned about design that way, but we also took our own photos and did some exercises with that. And I got like a Nikon D3200, you know, super entry level DSLR, and just used that for school and didn't really touch it much until like a couple of years ago when I started getting more serious about photography again. And went on from that to do some film, and then kept on buying all these film cameras that were breaking on me. So I decided to finally, I bought like a nicer point and shoot, but then wanted a bit more control, like an SLR, or wanted something similar to my DSLR. And so I decided to finally get, an SLR camera, and chose this one especially because I had, a 50 lens from the old DSLR, and, you can use all the F-mount lenses on that. But nowadays I've been using a lot this 105, which is a lot of fun. I've never been really using a focal length this long. Didn't really know, I shot the moon a lot, and I shot on a 50, so I like portraits, and I liked the moon especially, and decided I needed something longer to take more detailed photos of that. And so honestly, it was mainly just that to get a longer focal length, but have been pleasantly surprised with even street photography with the 105. Like less context, I can still capture some pretty interesting images. Just walking down the street, which I'm happy to find out.
Should I load?
Again, yeah, like I chose it. What's that?
Should I load some of those images and show them?
Yeah, you can look them up. As I say, it's approachable. Yeah, I use my digital lenses, and it's a good camera for like from amateurs to not so much professionals. I think professionals would move up to like an F6 or something, but also I couldn't see the screen share earlier. I'm not sure if it's showing now.
Beautiful, very beautiful.
I'll promise.
Can we see that?
I can't, but that's okay.
Oh.
As I say, as you see, I shoot a lot of portraits, so I like the F100. It's really heavy, and it does really well in portrait mode, like holding it in that way. I know some people like gravitate towards the battery pack, which I don't know. I don't shoot like more than 10 rolls in a day, so I don't really have an issue with the batteries ever. I like to stick with aperture priority. Again, like went for the SLR to have those automatic controls, or at least this one in particular, with autofocus and aperture priority, and a really nice viewfinder. And you can do 4 FPS, and you can waste a lot of money real quick if you want to, or just shoot single frames, and got a lot of versatility. One thing I realized recently that was really funny is it has like a depth of field preview, which kind of sounds like taking a photo. And I was like looking on Ken Rockwell's website about like just some things about the F100. He's like, it's got a great feature if you want to. Invariably you'll end up shooting with people, and the people want you to take your photo, and so you can just tell them, I took this photo, and I believe you with this sound, even though it's obviously not taking any photos, which I thought was really funny. I'm going to use that in the future.
I like your photos.
They're awesome.
Thank you.
I think this is your best focal length. You really.
Yeah, I like the 105 a lot. I've been playing around with I have like a 28 to 56 contact TDS, and I like the 35 and the smaller focal lengths. But this has been really surprising to me because I'm like, I really was approaching it like, what the fuck am I going to use this thing for? Like, I bought it to shoot the moon, and that's about it. And then realized that
it's the 110.
Surprising.
That's like a macro lens, right?
It can do macro too, yeah. So I don't think I mean, the photo of the rose, you can see like some nice macro detail on the little like prickly follicles on it. But I haven't done too much, true like macro stuff. I found some ants recently. That was fun. Yeah, it goes up, the macro is like, so it goes all the way out like that, which is pretty weird.
Yeah, I have a really cheap Canon, like I think it's called a Rebel 2000, and I got it for $20, and I can use all my Canon digital lenses on it.
Yeah, I shoot portrait 400 mainly. Have been recently experimenting with some Cinestill stuff, and I do love Kodak Gold. But all those photos are portrait 800. I recently bought like a speed light, which that cat was lit up as like a stray in the dark. I got this guy for like $15
I was gonna ask
yeah,
you
it's
if
a
you
beast,
used
but
flash for that one.
yeah, I just got this recently, and I haven't been using it too much. Like I'm not really good with like, I don't understand light all that much. Like I like heavy contrast, and I'm not like, I'm not much of like an actual human being portrait photographer, so I don't really know how to like light a face very well. But I know people use this for a lot more than just daytime or nighttime stuff. Obviously it's meant to balance out lighting, which I don't really use it for much, but figured I'd give it a shot. And yeah, this thing's really sweet. It's pretty cheap too. So you can get like used ones for like 200, and it's not gonna break, and it's a really reliable camera.
Yeah.
Awesome. Highly recommended.
Awesome. Thanks, Thomas.
Yeah, thank you guys.
I'll show my camera, and then that will be a wrap. So my camera is, I know Kyle has one too. It's the Nikon One Touch, which is a cheaper version of the L35AF. The L35AF, I think, goes for like $150 to $200 online. And I found this when I was searching to buy one. I'm still not sure what the difference between the two are. I know it has the same lens, but it was the very first autofocus point and shoot. And the reason why I like it so much is that when you're focusing and you have to press the shutter button, there are 4 kind of icons at the bottom, like a person, 2 people, a mountain, and it will show you, like a little ticker will show you what it's like focusing on. So frequently when I'm trying to shoot something, I'm seeing that it like is focusing on something that I don't want. And so I've also had, a Yashica T4, and I've had a Konica A4, and that was just, the focusing system was just like, it didn't show you what you were focusing on. You just put the subject in the middle and then have press and recompose. So the whole idea for this camera show and tell came about because we were, during the book club last week, there was a text about the Polaroid land camera, and one of the aspects that it said, or something that it said, was that the noise that it created, or that it made when you took a photo, made taking a photo like really fun and kind of changed the whole process, and like people just wanted to shoot with it because of the noise of the Polaroid. And this similarly, I have some film in here, but I'll just take a photo. It just has a really nice, like, in advance.
Can't confirm, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's the best noise ever.
It also has a great pop-up flash. And, Ansel Adams said, the best camera is the camera that you have on you. And I think that's true for this. I have, I have a Contax G, which is a really amazing camera, but I find myself just taking this with me all the time because it's so compact. It's also cheap, so I don't care if I break it. I bought this for $33, shipping included on eBay. And also, when I bought it, it had on the top, somebody wrote their name in Peloquin.
I love her.
I Googled this person. Oh, it also like had the instruction manual, which had his or her name on it, and the little camera bag with his or her name. And so I was obsessed with figuring out who Eloquin was, and I Googled it, and I couldn't find out. So I wrote the seller on eBay, and he said that he found it at a flea market in Tijuana. So
Wow, dude.
somebody took really good care of this camera, and I think of them often. I'll show some images. It also just has kind of a you know, the images, they're not the sharpest, I will admit, but most of my work, like I print really small, like 5x7, 8x10, and it's plenty sharp for that. So these are just like kind of screen grabs from Instagram, so they're going to be quite small, but you can get kind of the sense.
Ice cream cart, love it.
Nice.
This is the film seller at B&H. I'm sure everyone knows him.
I was gonna say, I've noticed because I bought like 5. I actually think I bought 5 of the version right over that, the AF3. And I keep on breaking them, but I was supposed to say that line of cameras, the AF is like, they're getting more expensive too, which is funny. Like 33 now, or like when you got it, I don't know how much they are now.
Right. I looked today, and I think
they're so good.
I think they go for like 60 now.
Yeah.
I would pay easily that for this if this broke.
Yeah. It's a great camera.
Speaking of, there is a Swiss camera store that gives a giveaway. I think it's the other one. What is it called? AF 35?
Yeah.
I'll put it in the chat. Maybe one of you can win the camera.
Wait, so you like sign up for a newsletter and they...
No, they have like this Instagram giveaway with 3 other. There's like 2 camera stores, and no, actually 3 all over Switzerland. 1 in Zurich, 1 in Bern, and I think all you have to do is tag them in one of your stories. Okay. I'll put it in a chat. Maybe one of you is the lucky one.
Cameron.
Yeah.
So I have the L35 AF, and on yours, does the flash, like if it's just too dark, the flash is going to come up automatically?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think you can like press it back down if you don't want the flash.
Right. Wait, what model is yours again?
It's just called a One Touch.
The One Touch, okay. And can you go above 400 ISO?
That I don't know. So I roll my own black and white film, and I think it can do 800.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it just reads off the DX code. But I've heard of people like Sharpieing onto it to make it read a different DX code if you want to like manually override it.
So when I'm at the darkroom, I just grab film canisters and then open them.
Oh, right.
You can reuse them.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, one thing I don't like about it is that I have reusable film canisters, but the camera defaults to 100 if it doesn't have a DX code.
Okay.
So I guess I could shoot like a 100 ISO film, but I just prefer 400.
Does it have any screw mount on the actual lens? Could you put ND filters on it?
Yeah, you can put filters on it.
So you could like use 400 and ND, down 2 stops to 100 potentially. You need an ND +2 or +2.
That's cool. I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah, it's just a neutral density filter. All it does is it can cut. Usually they're in quarter stop sets. I would get like, if you go to a place that sells photographic gels, or like somebody that sells Roscoe brand gels, you can get like a sampler of ND gel, and I think it's a quarter stop usually. You just get a big sheet of it, you can fold it over. Each time you add it, it's gonna be close to a quarter. I think once you get to 3 layers, it's technically pushing it over. You could try stuff like that. I know I had to do that with my SX70 when I was shooting Polaroid 600 film in it instead of, I think it's supposed to be like 120 ISO normally.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks.